Hello and welcome to part 2 of this week's breakfast time vocabulary theme of the Victorian era. So at the end of the last video on Monday, I promised you that I was going to give you some examples of how these words are used within a kind of historical sort of 19th century context. Because as we say, these aren't words that we have just randomly plucked out of nowhere. These are words that we've seen come up in the kind of classic texts that you're going to be studying or might even come across in your exams. So here's a couple of examples for you for words that we did last week and where we can find them inside classic texts. So for example, the word ostentatiously can be found inside Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And this is where they're describing the appearance of like a wedding dress. Another example is the word quaint. We talked about that last week. Now, last week we talked about quaint being used to describe like villages or places or things like that. But it can also be found in the Sherlock Holmes novels, where Sherlock Holmes often describes like puzzles as being quaint. He's almost like downplaying them, making them sound simple, where we know the context of Sherlock Holmes is that, they're normally quite complex things that he solves. So there's just a couple of examples for you. Now, inside the 11 Plus English Club, we also have some quizzes that accompany these videos. If you want to learn more about these words and the context and where they come from in the text that you find them in, definitely head over to the 11 Plus English Club and check out the membership that we have. And this is really going to help you to practice using these words, understanding where you find them in text, and ultimately practice loads of different types of comprehension papers and things like that. But for now, let's dive into part 2 of Breakfast Time Vocab and learn 5 more words based on our Victorian theme. Okay, so word number 1 is the verb cogitate. So cogitate means to sort of like think through things quite deeply. If we were going to use it in a sentence, we could say something like, philosophers spent many hours cogitating on important matters of politics and freedom. So it's this idea of like thinking really deeply, almost sort of like meditating on it and like sitting with the thought. Word number 2 is the noun cravat. So this is a word that we do sometimes still see in modern use, but not often. So it's almost like a synonym for a tie. It's like a type of tie that people would have worn more commonly, maybe like around the 19th century. So for example, if we were going to use it in a sentence, we could say something like, the gentleman straightened his cravat before going in to meet the very important family. So it's more of like a formal dress kind of thing. The next word is the adverb resplendently. So this is a really good word to describe like the appearance of something. So if something's resplendent or being sort of portrayed or being shown resplendently, it means like it's very bright and colourful, almost like very decorative. So we could say something like, the palace was resplendently decorated in time for the royal wedding. So this means that they would have gone all out, it would really be sort of showing off like their wealth. It would be like a very impressive thing to look at if it was described as looking resplendently. Next one is the adjective ornate. So ornate is a great word to describe something that's sort of very like detailed and beautiful in appearance. Often also quite delicate as well, like the context of how we use it. So you could say something like, the stained glass windows inside the cathedral had ornate, intricate patterns. So again, ornate is this idea of being like elaborate or like really highly decorated. And again, very like aesthetically pleasing, like a nice thing to look at. And finally, our last word for this little series is the noun elocution. So you often in older texts hear about people having sort of elocution lessons and things like that. And essentially, elocution is all about speaking clearly so that everybody can understand you. So for example, you could say something like, world leaders need to have excellent elocution skills to help inspire and grab the attention of their audiences. So this is something that was much more common back in the day, is that people would go for elocution lessons and be taught how to sort of speak and pronounce things in a certain way that for that time is what they thought was the best way to speak and sort of express yourself to people. Okay, so well done for learning these words. Now remember, you've got a couple of options here for you to go away and practice this vocab. So first of all, definitely have a go at using these words. They're quite challenging. We've kind of upped it a bit this week, but we really want you to have a go at using them in your own sentences. Don't worry if you don't have it perfect. That's what the practice is here for, and we will give you feedback on your sentences that you post in the comment. And the best sentence is, of course, going to win a prize as well, and that will be announced at the end of the week. Also as well, if you want to come along and join the 11 Plus English Club, we have loads of options for you and loads of things for you to practice. So if you check out this video description, you'll see some links in there And remember, if you want to join the Breakfast Time Vocabulary course, very soon I'm going to be running a live class inside the membership, and I'd love to see you there. Bye!